So now that you've mastered how to actually arrange your shapes, we'll be abusing this technique throughout every lesson because it's one of the most common elements that I use. So just to demonstrate it again, we have the background layer that we can toggle on and off, and the Pathfinder layer which we can toggle on and off. Let's say we want to create a few squares or a few shapes. We can click and hold on the shapes, select the circle, and drag out a quick circle. We can swap the colors. Then we're going to go create a whole new square. Nope, click the wrong one. Rectangle tool, and drag out a new shape. And we can swap the colors once again. If we want to change the colors, which I do at this point, I can click the white and choose something like the red. But in this case, actually, we want to use the colors that are already here. So we can use the eyedropper tool, which you'll find over here, which does indeed look like an eyedropper tool. Click it once, and then once you have the object selected, you can click anywhere on the palette, and it'll select whatever color is there. So in this case, we want this green. We're going to use the black direct selection tool again. Click somewhere on the white just to deselect. Click on the square, or the circle, eyedropper tool, and select the blue color. Then we'll select everything and shift it out. Now this was how I created this entire arrangement. Now if we wanted to show the circle on the very top, we'd simply click the circle, command bracket, and put it on front. If we wanted to send it to back, command and square bracket once again. So with layers being mastered, you can now create a variety of shapes, and using those shapes you can also cut them accordingly to get a whole new shape. Because in most scenarios, you won't want to manually create a triangle or very complex piece of a circle being cut 45 degrees up and 30 degrees down. That's too complicated. We'd use basic shapes like squares, circles, and triangles to create more complicated shapes. And this is where this important tool comes in, called Pathfinder. Now again, we can go to Essentials, reset Essentials. It'll go back to the default. We're going to use these little arrows to arrange it to the center, this entire document. Click the arrow here to hide everything, and we're good to go. So now that we have our two shapes, we can do a variety of things with them. Cut them down, merge, only keep the overlapping areas, and a slew of other options. So let's try the very basic option. And to do that, we'll have to go to Window and go to Pathfinder. And I'm going to arrange it right here just for the sake of visibility again. So whenever we use Pathfinder, we have to give it a few shapes to work with. Just clicking Pathfinder here won't do anything. You'll get the arrow, the filter result produce no results. Please select two overlapping paths. And this just means that it needs two shapes to work with. And these squares and these circles, each of them is considered one path. So this is one path and this is one path. We need two overlapping paths to use this technique. So we're going to use a black cursor and select both of them, just by clicking and holding. And the first thing you'll do is we'll try each option one by one so you visually see the effect that changes, and you'll use these throughout any process of making logos because it's going to be a massive time saver. Click on the very first option, Unite. These will merge the colors into one shape. You'll lose the option to move the objects separately and they'll take on one color. However, if you have a mess of objects that you just want to merge together to create a cleaner shape, this is a perfect solution. Since we can click the shape and we see that it's one shape, we don't have to move them separately. So if we wanted a square and a circle blob as one shape, this is a perfect tool. So let's do the minus front now. So we can select both and do minus front. And this will take whatever object is in front and delete itself and that part of the object that is overlapping from beneath it. And you're left with a Pac-Man shape. Now, notice how creating this Pac-Man shape manually would have taken some precision and some luck. But in this case, we took two shapes and we created a new shape out of it. Now let's head over to the right a bit, select both shapes again, and let's do intersect. And this will leave just the intersecting objects. For exclude, you can select both objects again, click exclude, and the overlapping areas are deleted from both the objects. Quite a cool effect. Now these are the shape modes, and there's also another palette of Pathfinder modes found in the same tools option of Pathfinder, right here. So we can select both shapes again and click divide. Now, this is a very interesting tool, and it's probably the one I use the most because I'm quite lazy and I wouldn't want to be doing everything manually. Before we use the divide tool, each object was separate. The circle belonged to itself and the square belonged to itself. You couldn't move the overlapping areas by itself. But if we select both objects and click Pathfinder and click divide, you'll see that if we go and move the overlapping area, you can move the overlapping area while retaining the actual shape of it. Now, one thing to note, I use the silver pen tool, or silver direct selection tool in this case. But that's only because if I use the black cursor, it's going to select the entire object. Because when you use Pathfinder, the two objects that you select or put an effect on, it's going to put it into one group. And we can see that by going to the layers. And we go all the way down here. We see that these groups are created that hold another two objects below it. But in most scenarios, you don't really want to have a group for these since you'll be wanting to manipulate them individually. To get rid of this effect, you just click on the objects that are grouped together and go to Object and you click Ungroup. And now you can go with the indirect selection tool and move them individually. Perfect, right? So this is a tool I use most often. So we can select these two again and we can do Trim. And that's going to delete everything that's hidden behind the two objects. We can do Merge, select the two objects again. And this will unite the two objects as one shape, but this time it's actually going to retain the color of the objects. We can go to Crop. And that's just going to leave us with the actual overlapping area. Outline. It's just going to create an outline. And then for minus back, it's going to minus the back with the circle shape selected in front of it. Sorry, that's a bit confusing at first. So we can select it again, do minus front, and you're left with this kind of shape. And it's interesting because once you start really abusing this Pathfinder tool, you won't even have to start making manual shapes or figuring out how they make this kind of shape or how they make it bend like this. You won't have to do it at all. With the combination of a few of these shapes, you could technically create any other shape in existence.